Hey folks, I hope you're all having a good afternoon. I want to take a look at what's going on with Deaf Noodles. It feels like things have suddenly taken a turn. I mean, he was always kind of a loud, obnoxious kind of character, but lately it's like that character has kind of bled out into his whole persona, like he's even behind the scenes personality. So obviously we're going to make characters out of fragments out of ourselves, right? Or out of the wishful thinking parts of ourselves. That makes sense. But why the sudden shift? I want to take a look at that. So first, I want to take a look at the Claves Astrologica. Whoop. Waning crescent. So something is ending for Dennis. And I'm going to call him Dennis from now on and not Deaf Noodles. I'll call Deaf Noodles the character, and then I'll call, Dennis for the man, the person. Interesting. Spirit is saying man-child. Oh, okay. Of course. He might be a Pisces. There might be a significant sign in his chart that is in Pisces, for instance. But this is about boundaries, about intuition. It's like a boundary is shrinking. I'm getting mental health from Spirit. There could be some kind of significant disorder, some kind of personality disorder, for instance, that's coming to the forefront. And again, this could be about something in Taurus that he has his sign in. And it could be having a heavy influence in what's going on here. This is about a need for security, but it's also a love for wealth, for comfort, basically. So I'm getting more that this is a sign in his chart, and this is more about the influence that's being affected right here. So something about his comfort, his security, his love of luxury, his, I'm sure that he's made a decent amount of cash being on YouTube. That's being eroded here. 2 earth signs. This is another influence. Okay. Something is moving quickly. Okay, so Capricorn is about being it's the more Saturn-esque part of our lives. It's the drill sergeant part of our lives. And I see that this sense of security is going through a struggle moment right now. It's being tested and challenged, and it's being done very, very quickly. He's kind of burning things to the ground, if you will. It's also part of some kind of transit that his Taurus at this particular planet is going through. Excuse me, it's allergy season here. If you hear me making noises like that, it's because of that. This is moving quickly for him, though. I'm looking at these 2 cards, and I'm reading it kind of like I would a Lenormand spread, with this being the central theme and with this being the bookends. So his boundaries between his character and his personality are being severely tested right now, and basically what's coming to the forefront is that there is no real boundary between Deaf Noodles, the character, and Dennis, the person. Something is rapidly ending here. He may have been doing all this stuff talking about how old he was and wasn't, starting a channel, putting a particular kind of persona out there. That might have been all done to have furthered his career, but it feels like it's if it's not crashing and burning, it's definitely going through a closing bell kind of sensation, right? It's kind of like an era is closing out. And if something is more, again, on the other side, it's going to be a deeply fragmented version of what he is going for here. I'm hearing that his lies, that he is a perpetual liar is coming through, but there's also the, like it's a mental condition. He might not have that, but he might also have a mild version of that kind of compulsion. Okay, yeah, he's a compulsory liar. He might be a mild compulsory liar, at least like behind the scenes. I hear that he's more severe. Okay, so he does lie to make himself more comfortable, to get away from his reality that he's an individual in his about to hit his 40s, and he's still at this particular level. I want to ask why he's at this particular level. I want to do some shuffling. And by the way, Spirit says to keep them all in reverse. Sometimes Spirit does not want me to do half and half. Sometimes she wants me to do all upright. Sometimes she wants me to do all reverse. But this time she asked me to do all reverse. We are in a Saturn retrograde period, so there may be some things that Dennis is learning as a result of being in this Saturn retrograde period. I believe it started in June of 2022 and it lasts until like later in October. So it lasts a decent amount of time. And I note that all this blow up stuff this year has been happening within this Saturn retrograde period. So why is he where he is right now in terms of his career, what he wanted? Like, I can see that he wanted to be, a comedian with his name in bright lights and all that kind of stuff. He wanted to be famous. I'm getting from Spirit that he didn't have a very good plan, a very good way of getting there. I'm seeing that he's got kind of passive energy, that he isn't very competitive, and you can kind of see that if you can stand to watch his roasts. They can be like really difficult to get through unless you've got like something like alcohol or like something like that in you. Okay, drink legally, all that kind of good stuff. But I see him as someone who's not very able to compete with other people, and I've heard from so many veteran comedians how if you're going to progress in the field, you need a decent amount of scar tissue in order to succeed. Like, you could hate Stephen Colbert and John Oliver and people like that all you want, but they're at the top because they have decades of experience and scar tissue under their belt. Whether you agree with their comedy style or not, they're at the top because they started from the bottom and worked their asses off to get to the top. Now, they had some help, right? Lady Luck was on their side. Networking was another thing that was on their side. But they also had an ability to compete that Dennis does not have. And also, I see him as being a very passive-aggressive individual who is unable to take criticism. And that's another thing. If you're going to be a creative individual, criticism is a huge part of your creativity. And that means like being a painter, a sculptor, a video game developer. It doesn't matter. If you're pursuing something in the creative arts, you have got to be willing to handle criticism. And I don't think that he's able to do that. And so he's just kind of like stuck in neutral, just kind of like stays in this cycle. I'm doing this here for the camera. He just kind of stays in this cycle, and like he always expects applause for like accolades and applause for all these like low-key things that don't take that much effort to do, right? Again, he's not tried, tested, and true. His comedy abilities haven't gotten to that ability yet, so there's no one clapping for him. Nobody's celebrating this. They're all watching him to laugh at him instead. This is humiliating, and I know that these are all interactions with people. He's not like this. His art, for one thing, is just not ready to get out there, but I don't know that he has the grit or the motivation to make his comedy art. I don't know that he ever did. I feel like because he lied about his age, that kind of tells a story about how insecure he is about his age. I'll bet he feels insecure that he hasn't met the goals that he has wanted to by his like the age that he wanted to be successful at, you know? It's kind of a humiliating defeat for him. Okay, there he's got a tower moment that he does not see coming for him. This is in the future, the not too distant future. There's something coming in from the law, possibly, that could like really put a damper on things. Like, he already was doing things kind of like shady, but it's like something else is going to come zipping out of nowhere, and he's just not looking for this because he's a very one-track minded individual, and right now he wants to be seen as someone who's earned his way to the top, even though he hasn't. Flood. What's up with that? What's with the word flood? Take this with a grain of salt. I'm getting that the basement of his comedy house might be flooded. Take that with like a couple of grains of salt, okay? I don't know if that's actually legit. We were talking about him staying in cycles. It's because he's a mental child and refuses to grow up. And of course, if you're going to be a mental child and refuse to grow up, then of course tower moments are going to come to you out of nowhere because you're a child and your next concern is, what can I play with next? I don't know. But when I see the perpetual child alongside this family card, he wants a family, but he also doesn't want a family. I remember that he's already been married and divorced. This is part of that. It's part of why things fell apart, and it may be why he is, and it is part of why he is where he is now. Karma is in how he treated his past relationship, his past marriage partner. There are some debts that need to be paid down, regardless of what either one of them say in public. He has some debts that he needs to pay down if he's going to grow up. He's going to need to go through this tower moment but he's going to need to take the high road at all times while this tower moment kind of plays out, but he's not going to do that. I see things continuing to fall apart for him. So this is what's going on with him as far as why he is where he is right now. I want to take a look at a Celtic cross to kind of figure out why exactly things are kind of melting down now, this Saturn retrograde, right? Because he's been doing this for a minute, but it feels like things are just kind of letting loose, like the zipper is opening and stuff is just kind of falling out of the hole. I know that we've got the Saturn influence right here, but I'm wondering what exactly what else is moving underneath this. It feels like a public meltdown. What's going on underneath this meltdown? Okay. So let's do a Celtic cross on this. Guess what shows up on the bottom? So, the cycles that he's been going through are why he is where he is now, and also kind of why things have been kind of ripping open. It's like the conflicts that have been kind of like underneath the surface are now rising to the surface. People aren't celebrating this, or, actually, people are. They're really happy about this. They're happy that they get to tell their story. Yeah, Here we go with it in the past. It's like something in this past relationship, this past marriage relationship, unraveled something in him, but gradually. And it's like he kept doubling down on this unraveling. And eventually, it brought him to where he is now. It's like Saturn retrograde just kind of opened things and made things a little bit worse for him. And like we were saying earlier, in the future, he's got a tower moment coming that he doesn't seek. And like, people are going to be celebrating this tower moment, which is kind of tragic. I mean, thinking about people celebrating your downfall is a deeply humbling thought. The ships that, the stuff that he wanted to come in as a result of his hard labor aren't going to come in. He made all kinds of plans. They were shoddily made plans, and they've kind of fallen apart. And he might be very mystified as to why they are falling apart. And it's because he refuses to think in new directions, and this is fascinating. It's like he started the one particular way as a younger person and just never deviated from that point. That might be why his marriage fell apart. It's absolutely why new things don't happen to him. It's because he keeps doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. He keeps doing bigger things the same way, but expects different results. This is someone who's not able to manage the new money that's coming into them well at all. This is someone who thinks consistently like a child when it comes to new opportunities, when it comes to money, and just new financial, just new opportunities in general, like with comedy clubs, for instance. He's blown all these opportunities, and he needs to recognize that that's the issue here. Because when he doesn't, he's making himself a layup, basically, for this tower moment that's coming through in the future. Permits, I think, are part of it. I had that moment of that, basement flooding thing. And again, take that with many grains of salt, because that may not happen at all. But it's like the shoddy maintenance on that comedy club is going to get him to some real trouble that he's not going to be able to dig out of very easily. He's going to have to ask for help, and people aren't going to want to help him. Permanent teenager, when it comes to relationships, connecting with people, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's closed off. He takes offense to criticism, he wears his heart on his sleeve and then bitches and complains when people attack it, right? Remember that pull up and shut up thing he said for a while, then when someone did, he got violent, physically violent. That's what's going on here. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and then he invites people to come at it, and then when people do, he gets all butthurt. That's exactly what's going on here. Those are his external circumstances. That's his advice card right there. He can't stop being this person. It's like these are habits that he picked up as a 15, 16-year-old, maybe 17, and he just repeats this. He just does it like he's almost 40. He's been doing this for over 2 decades now, or something like that. And he just does not grow up. Interesting. So a transformation is coming. These are hopes and fears. This is the end of an era, death and rebirth, the end of one era and the beginning of a new one. And what will the new era look like? We can look at that in just a second. Because everything's out of balance. It's the end of one era and the beginning of a new one, because everything's out of balance here. Spending like crazy, not saving at all for the future, not saving for this tower moment that he's got coming in, and so everything's going to be dramatically out of balance. In his personal life, in his professional life, it won't matter. This card means everywhere. Everything is all out of balance. Things are going to feel really shitty for a while for Dennis. So I wanted to get more information on what the new era right here is going to look like, because it's not just about the end of one era, it's about the beginning of a new one. It's really why I love this iteration. I hope it'll focus okay for you. I love this iteration of the Death card. It looks so scary at first, but then you look through the hood and there's something bright, beautiful, and new coming through. I just love this particular iteration, but I'm wondering what kind of future Dennis and Deaf Noodles are going to have. If nothing deviates at all. So he's got heartbreak that never ends right here. It's just layers upon layers of heartbreak here. Okay. Yeah, both with himself, with his Empress and Emperor within himself, but he's also just never going to find the relationship that he always wanted. Because justice is going to have her way with him, basically. Y'all, it must be a Mercury retrograde, because if it isn't my nose acting up, I know that we've got spirit sending messages like your nose itches, that kind of thing. My kitty cat is also going crazy over here, being a distraction, so it must be a Mercury retrograde. There's specifically something that happened in this marriage partnership over here that he did not deal with, that she did not deal with. I know that I think I remember her coming out with a statement saying that she's got no issue, but there are so many issues back there with his past marriage relationship that justice is coming through in a major way. So this is his new era, is going to be dealing with the fallout from his marriage relationship that he's really done a lot of work to sweep under the rug. He doesn't want people to know a particular thing about what happened back here. Tell you what, let's do a brief marriage relationship reading with what happened in the past. And I'll try to shuffle really hard. Or really well, I should say. Oh my goodness. That was loud. What happened in the past? Well, it fell apart for one thing. It looks like Spirit divided them on purpose. This was a way to save her and a way to keep him from doing more damage. So when she says, I don't have any argument with him or anything like that, I don't remember exactly what she said, if she said anything, but she's trying to make it so that he doesn't double back on her. Spirit separated them on purpose to protect her from doing more damage, from having more damage done to her, basically. Yeah, they didn't work well together. They didn't vibe together. They just weren't made for each other. They got married to each other because it was convenient. They basically settled for each other. A lot of their friends around them were getting married, and they said, well, I guess you're left. I guess we're kind of friends. Is that good enough? I don't have to love you that much in order to for us to be together. We have good sex. What else do we need? And I'm getting that from Dennis specifically. She did not keep his last name when she divorced him. And she may not have changed her last name to his at all. Dennis may have really taken issue with that because that's a random thing to say unless it was an issue with Dennis specifically. He didn't like that. He wanted more ownership over her than she actually gave him. She wanted to keep parts of herself to herself, right? She didn't want to share like all his projects. And so he's kind of lashing out at her still to this day. Somehow, in some fashion, what he's doing is lashing out at what she wouldn't take part in. It's like she said, you're not going to be able to open a comedy club. That takes way too much work. Or you're not going to be able to be a comedian with their name in bright lights because that takes years of hard work, and a lot of people just never make it. Like even people who are like pretty funny, like they'll stay in a local area for forever and they'll be like local legends, local celebrities, but that's as far as they go. And so things have completely ended. Like this is something that they cannot go back to, and yet Spirit's going to bring it up from the past in order to force Dennis to deal with what he did, because he's still acting up because of what he did. He hasn't dealt with it. We saw earlier with the Page of Swords and the Page of Pentacles. This is someone who is not in control of his finances because he's not in control of his mind. Well, he's not in control of his earthly resources, like not just finances, but earthly resources in general. The things that have been provided for him to make life more comfortable, he's a terrible steward of them. Spirit says that's it. No more reading. Y'all have a great day, okay?